In terms of Zoom, if you guys don't have not had an introduction to Zoom yet, there are just a couple of things I wanted to note really quickly. The first is you can probably see at the bottom, I see a lot of people are using this already, but there is a chat box. Hello, everyone. I just wrote hello, everyone in the chat box. Can you guys all see that? So if you have any questions or comments during the presentation, please feel free to write it right there in the chat box, and either I will ask Karam or he can respond to you as well. The second thing is we would ask during the webinar that you keep yourself on mute. You can see the mute on the bottom left of your screen. And I will also be able to mute you if there's background noise and it's loud. If you have a question at the end, feel free to just unmute yourself and you can ask any question you have. And then finally, this is recorded. So please don't ask anything you don't want to have on a recording because this will go up on YouTube afterwards. And then as Sapo mentioned, if you guys could introduce your name and where you're from in the chat box, just so we have an idea of who you are, we would love to get to know you. So feel free to write your name in the chat box. Okay, are there any questions about Zoom before we begin? Nope, everyone's happy? Everyone's smiling? Great. Okay, sounds good. Well then, I am excited to hand over to Karam. Could you give us a bit of an overview of yourself and your background?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Alice. I'm pleased to see that there are so many entrepreneurs who are interested in attending this kind of event in Iraq, so that's fantastic. Just to give you guys a little bit of background about myself, my name is Karam Saridar. I'm the CEO of Manahil El Ryan and of Elryan.com. There are two companies which are owned by our holding company. Principally, our company was set up as a distribution company. We are the distributor for one of the distributors for Samsung Electronics in Iraq. We are the exclusive distributor for Sony Electronics in Iraq. And we also manufacture and distribute our own products called Elryan. A little bit about me. I was born in Mosul in 1986. My family moved to the UK in 1990 when the Gulf War started. And I was fortunate enough that my mother is English and I have a British passport. And so I was able to grow up in the UK and get my education in the UK. I studied economics at the University of Bath. I did my master's in management, and after graduating, I worked in the UK for a few years before moving to Jordan in 2010, where I joined a company called Elryan, which was the distributor for LG Electronics at the time. I think most of the people here are probably more interested about Elryan.com, which is the e-commerce business that we run. I'm happy to talk about wholesale and distribution, but it's quite a boring industry, so I'm not sure people want to hear about that. But it did lead me to found Elryan.com. The reason that I founded it in the first place was that as a distribution business, it is incredibly boring, and it's all about giving credit and reducing prices and building customer relationships. And there's very little room for innovation. There's not much you can do. You're not going to be making new products. You're not going to be coming up with a better customer experience, really. You're just trying to cut costs and cut down your supply chain costs and provide a product at a better price. So I was very, very frustrated working from 2010 to 2014 in that business. And I found that there was not a lot I could do with all my education, with all my experience. I was not able to really do much more than anyone else could. And so I couldn't really get a competitive advantage in the business any more than we already had. And so I decided in 2014 that there was a lot of opportunity in Iraq to do e-commerce since nobody else had been doing it at the time. We started out basically as an extension of our business we decided to start selling our own products online. So we spent maybe $500. So you can all relate to this. It doesn't cost a lot to start a business. We set up a website for a few $100s. One of the guys in the office did it. If I had time, I would have done it myself. You can buy templates, you can launch. And we just started advertising using word of mouth. So we started offering our products online, and our employees actually started advertising this to their friends and family, and we were giving a commission at the time. So using a very traditional method of giving referrals and commissions to try and spread the word about the e-commerce business. And it took a while to pick up steam. The business was very different to what you see now. There was not a lot of interest in e-commerce. People didn't know about online shopping. Very few people knew about it, and there were no other competitors at the time to bring awareness to it. So thanks for sharing the website. Actually, let me share another website as well for anyone who wants to look, which is our new website. There we go. If anyone wants to check out the website. And yeah, so it took a long time for us to, to pick up steam. And I was giving like quite a bit of time, not too much time, but I was giving at least a few hours a week to this project, and it was representing almost nothing compared to our total business, which, as you can imagine, is quite a large business, being the distributor for Samsung and Sony. So I know that in the beginning there were I got a lot of feedback and bad feedback from staff saying that it wasn't worth pursuing, and that we weren't that we should be focusing on the distribution side, which is where most of our business is. Unfortunately, we proved them wrong. The business has grown, and I personally love and have a passion for e-commerce, and I love what we do, and we're working a lot and investing a lot right now in improving that service. I was thinking actually before today's session, I was just thinking that what advice would I have liked to have received, or I don't want to say what advice would I have liked to receive, because I actually received a lot of good advice, but what would I have taken on board 15 years ago? If I had 3 things which I could have taken on board. And I think the first thing is that being passionate about the business. If you guys are setting up a business and you're just interested in making money, that's fine. You can be successful, but it's a lot harder than if you really love what you're doing and you just want to be the best at it, because you're going to face challenges every single day. And sometimes it's hard, it's hard to go to work and know that you're going to be facing problems, right? But if you love what you do, then you're excited when you get up in the morning, you want to go and you want to deal with those, all of those things, and then you want to improve and grow your business. So that is definitely, I think, one thing, the most important lesson, I think, for anyone, that, build a business, be an entrepreneur, but try and find something that you actually love doing, and then naturally everything else will follow. And then building on from that, just a little bit, sorry to rant, by the way, Alice, feel free to cut in.
This is great, keep going.
Just to lead on from that, you do face challenges, and in Iraq you will face more challenges than probably in any other country because of the environment we work in. And so I think the second thing that I thought would be an important piece of advice is that we do a lot of what we call firefighting in business. We put out fires. In other words, we solve problems, and a lot of the time that takes up our time. It takes up all of our time. It takes up all of our team's time, and we're not actually making any progress. We're not getting anywhere. We're just solving a problem. And so what I would say is there's 2 things which you can do which really, really help in that regard. The first one is make sure that when you solve a problem, you also look at why the problem happened, look at the reason, and try to build a system to deal with that. Otherwise, you're going to continue spending all of your time fighting problems. And as your business grows, you're just going to be doing more of that. You're not going to be doing the fun stuff, which you want to be doing, growing the business, building the product, improving your service offering. And so it will become a bigger and bigger problem. So try from the beginning to really look at the causes and resolve them at a systematic level. The other thing, the third piece of advice I would give, which also originates from that, is sometimes even when you build a system, you're going to need people to be able to deal with that. You can't always just rely on technology to deal with everything. And so make sure to build a good team. Make sure that the people who are in your team believe in your vision statement. They believe in what you're doing. They're excited about it like you are, and that they adhere to the same culture that you've set for the company. If they don't, you'll find that as time goes on, they will actually start to corrupt your culture. So not just being, they will not just not follow your culture, they will actually start to have other employees also follow their own mentality, and that will make it very, very difficult for you to make progress in the company. Thank you for the summary, Alice. I wanted this session to be as open as possible so that we can get people's questions and give them feedback. So if anyone would like to ask anything, or if Alice, if you want to ask anything, please go ahead.
I have one follow-up question that I would love to ask before I hand it over to the audience. Actually, it's two follow-up questions. It's one, when you started Elryan.com, you were basically the only e-commerce company.
Right.
You were talking about the importance of like systems and frameworks. What systems did you have to build early in order to be successful as one of the only tech companies, e-commerce companies in Iraq? And then second, what tips do you have for building a great team, especially when you have to kind of really work to find that great talent?
Sure. The first thing regarding building systems, there's a concept in tech. I don't know how many of you are interested in tech and how many of you are in other fields, but there's a concept in debt called technical debt or technological debt. And the idea is that as you scale a business, it becomes difficult to do if you have not made the right investment in technology. And so when we talk about systems, one thing that is you can find, for example, you will not find it, to be completely honest, if you go to Elryan.com, you will not find it there. But if you go to the new website, which I shared, which is launching very soon, you will find it's there. As you scale and as you start to have a lot of traffic, and this applies to other things, not just to websites, but as you scale, you start to run into problems if you have not made the investment. For example, your website might be built to deal with 100 customers or 1,000 customers a day. But for sure, when you have 100,000 visits a day, you're going to start facing problems. And so it's really difficult to do that when you're a startup, because unless you're actually doing the tech work yourself and you have the technical knowledge, you need to make a significant investment to be able to get those scales. So it's difficult. You need to start out small, and you don't want to invest more than your capability before you have revenue. But as you start to have a proof of concept, and as you can see your business is starting to scale, you definitely need to plan in advance to make sure that you're making the investments to be able to cope with the traffic. I can give you guys some other examples. For example, when we started the business, when we receive an order online, we used to just take the order and we used to enter it. We have something called an ERP system, which is an enterprise resource planning system, which a lot of companies use to manage their inventory and accounting and HR and other things. And so we had our own system for the wholesale and distribution company. And what we would do is when we receive an order, we would just manually take the details and create the order in our ERP system so that our warehouse will know to supply the item, and so that we can follow up on the accounting of that. As we started to scale, obviously having someone sitting there entering thousands of orders a day it's very, very difficult. It means that basically, let's say one person can create 200 orders per day. That means every time you want to sell 200 more orders, you have to hire another person. So all of a sudden you end up with this very, very high overhead, which is not feasible for the business, because the entire premise of e-commerce is that you want to be low margin, very, very competitive and efficient. And so that's another example of something we looked at. And then as we've grown, we've continued to make those investments. Today, for example, we're currently investing in a very advanced delivery management system. We already have a delivery management system in place, which will optimize the route of the vehicle when it delivers to the customer. And so what that does, just to give you guys a simple idea, is if we have 10 customers in different areas in Arbil, it will give the best route so that the vehicle can deliver those 10 orders in the fastest time. And so that's something we've had for years, where we do that with our fleet of vehicles, where we kind of optimize the deliveries between them. But today we're actually investing more in, first of all, making sure that's integrated with our online system, our e-commerce system. And second of all, we're adding more advanced functionality. For example, with our business, one of the things you face is products can be large or they can be small. So we need to make sure that it fits in the car. So it's no good saying he can deliver 50 orders because it's in one street and they don't fit in the vehicle. So that's something we have to model in. We model in things like the speed of the car because of the size. It could be a small car or a big car. We model in things like, for example, if something needs installation, you need to make sure that the team who's going there knows how to do the installation. So we have to factor that in. And then we're doing things like allowing trucks to pick up and deliver products selectively. So that becomes more and more complex. So I probably went into too much detail about that concept, but definitely you have to make sure that you plan ahead. The second question, which Alice asked regarding how do you build your team, that's one of the most challenging things you can do in Iraq, is building a team. First of all, because unfortunately, there are less educated people in Iraq than you would find in other parts of the world, and we've suffered because of the last 20, 30 years of lack of investment in education. So the starting point for any employee who's joining is very, very low, and you have to do a lot of training for your employees, regardless, of who they are. You definitely have to train them. And so I think the things that you need to look at when you're recruiting, it's less about somebody's qualifications or capabilities, and it's more about their attitude. It's more about their belief system. It's more about their willingness to do the work. Are they committed? Because definitely when you're starting a business, there's people always say you need to work smarter, right? So you definitely need to be smarter than other people when you work. But there's also a very, very simple factor, which is if you do more work, then you're going to be better than somebody who does less work, right? So if they're just as smart. So you need people who are hardworking. I know that a lot of people value work-life balance, but the truth is, as an entrepreneur, when you do a new project, you're really giving all of your time to that project. And especially in the beginning, when you're hiring the first few people, you need people who are dedicated. It's not going to work if the guy goes home at 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. and says, that's it, I'm not answering my phone anymore. So definitely you have to find people who have the same belief system as you and are incentivized. And then you have to look at, how do you motivate them? Incentive systems. You have to make sure that they understand their job description. So there's a lot of things, that we don't get right in Iraq, which need to be worked on in general for companies. And that is to make sure the company understands their job description. Is there a written document which says what you expect from the employee? Is there a written document which specifies what incentives are they getting? Have they had the proper training? Do they understand the processes and procedures, or are you just telling them off because they did something wrong when nobody ever taught them how to do it right? So there's all of these things which help the recruitment process. And you'll find, I think, if you look at someone like Carrefour, they're a great example because they have like 1,500 employees, I think, if not more, in Kurdistan. And you would think, how can you train? How can you hire and train so many people? How can you find so many qualified people to do that job in Kurdistan? The truth is, what they've done, Carrefour has created very good systems to make sure that any employee they hire pretty much will be able to do his job, because they're very, very clear. If you go into their back office, you'll see the operating diagrams. They know exactly what to do at every single point. Every decision is mapped out for them. So they still have their own problems, but certainly they're less than somebody else who tries to do that without the system in place. That's it from me.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I was just talking with my colleague about how we need to make sure that this goes up on Facebook so that everybody else can get this advice as well. There are some questions now coming in over chat. So what I would say is, starting with Mohammed Azeez, would you mind taking yourself off of mute, introduce yourself first, and then ask the question? Mohammed, do you want to ask?
Hello, yes. Sorry for the background noise before anything. So I'm Mohammed Nadem. I live in Erbil. I have a startup called Hasara. We're a real estate startup, and we are trying to enable people to find and buy and sell and rent houses and apartments and whatever you have in properties. We are also trying to serve customers in the 7-star system like Airbnb, so that hopefully one day will integrate back with Elryan, delivering them all of their necessities into their homes. We already have talked with Lezo for food. So yeah, my question is, what are the distribution channels that you tried in both stages, the early one and the growth one, because I know Iraq is really tough to have a distribution channel that works like the US, for example. They have infrastructure for the tech so they can deliver faster, and their ways to reach their customers is much easier than Iraq. So, yeah.
So are you talking, Mohammed, specifically about logistics? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm talking about how do you reach your customers in the early stages, and then how do you reach them in the growth stages? Do you only use social media? Do you actually,
Right.
you said you would use word of mouth and incentives in the beginning?
Sure, okay. So first of all, I'm glad to hear about your project. There are so many opportunities in Iraq for startups, and you really don't need to invent the wheel. You don't need to innovate. You can take existing concepts which have succeeded outside of Iraq, and you just do them well, and you'll do great. And real estate is one of those areas where there's a lot of opportunity. Regarding distribution, or if I understand you, if we're talking about marketing and reaching the customer acquisition. Customer acquisition in the early stage for us was very, very difficult because there was not a lot of awareness of online shopping. And so even today, a lot of orders come in by telephone, and a large part of what we do is actually to teach people and educate people on how to do that order. So if you're talking today about your real estate business, you'll probably get your first 100 customers offline. You're not going to be doing anything online. You're going to be going to friends and family and people you know and saying, look at my great app. It makes it so much easier. Why don't you use it? And if you do a good job, you'll succeed, because I know, for example, from Yedgar, from Lezo, that they have not invested a lot in marketing at all, and it has all been word of mouth. So it is all about, delivering a service. If the customer is pleased with the service they get, they're going to recommend it to other people. That's just the way it happens. So if you don't have a big marketing budget, then you can just focus on making your product really worthwhile, and the rest will follow. For us, because we are at a later stage, we spend a lot on marketing. But what we do, we market a lot across a lot of channels. We use Facebook, we use Instagram, we use TikTok, we use Google, we use radio, we use TV, we use everything. For me, definitely the online channels are much, much better, especially because we can convert directly to customers, because they can just press a button on their screen and suddenly they can buy a product. But what we've done, and what makes us a little bit unique, is the AI engine which drives our website. So today, when you browse, you're not getting the same experience as somebody else. You are getting a customized experience based on 26 data points, which we profile using cookies. You get a cookie alert when you open the website, and that allows us to kind of build a profile. And we check that profile against other things like social media, like Facebook, and that allows us to increase our conversion rate and reduce our cost of customer acquisition. And that's really important when you're growing, that you can acquire customers at a cost which is lower than your gross margin or your contribution from the sale. So for us, we make our money back with the first order from the customer. And we think that we will continue to do so for a long time, because we have fairly low acquisition costs. And now our AI is helping to drive those costs down. Because what happens now is when we place an advert on Facebook, you will see one advert and somebody else will see another advert. We'll know, for example, that you're based in Erbil, and in Erbil, the demand is for front-loading washing machines more than top-loading washing machines. Whereas the guy in Basra will see a twin-tub washing machine or a top-loading washing machine. They will know that you have a brand preference for Samsung. You don't want a Chinese brand because you're carrying an iPhone, and they know that you like to spend money. You buy things on other websites, and so they can build up a profile and understand that you're going to be less sensitive about price, and so they'll suggest you Samsung products. Whereas somebody who they know is looking for the best price, they'll be presented with the cheapest products. And so that's what we're doing today to improve the effects of the marketing. In terms of the channels, I think they're fairly well known. You have the online media, and you have the traditional offline billboards, outdoors, radio. Newspaper is almost useless in Iraq. I would focus on the online channels.
Great, thanks. Muqdad, I think you had a question as well. Would you mind unmuting yourself and introducing yourself and then asking the question? Dad, are you there? Well, I will ask you the question in case he is having problems with his technology. He asked, since you talked about building a team, I would really love to hear your take on what are the things I should look for in a person when I'm recruiting salesmen. So what specifically when related to sales, what should you look for in a great candidate?
Yeah, sales is a funny one. It's interesting because the first thing is that I would say relates to the pay structure for a salesman. Before you even talk about recruitment, it's how you structure the salary, which is that you definitely want to go with a lower basic and higher incentive. And really, a lot of people are reluctant to do that in Iraq. But when you find someone who is, it means that they believe in their capability to sell. Because if I'm willing to take, half the salary, but you're giving me an incentive where if I succeed, I can make double what I would expect to make, that is a good criteria to use to determine who's going to work. You find a lot of people will say, no, I'm not interested. I want a fixed salary. Sometimes that's because of their, their whatever situation they have, but sometimes it's also because they don't believe that they're going to be able to succeed in their job, and self-belief is very, very important for that role. The other thing is you need somebody who really understands the product that you sell, understands your market and your competitors, because you find all too often that salesmen in Iraq are thinking only about price. If you're going to think only about price, you don't need the salesman. You can just sit there and sell yourself. You make a few phone calls a day to some wholesalers and make the sales yourself. If you want a salesman, they need to actually add some value. They need to be able to at least cover their salary. And what that means is that they have to explain to the customer why your product is better than the competitors. They need to understand the specifications of the product they're selling, not just, oh, this is just because this is what we sell. This is an air conditioner and this is an air conditioner. No, this is an air conditioner. The compressor is Japanese. The capacity is higher. The warranty is 2 years. It's only $10 more expensive. That's easily worth it with these features. So it's really important. I think for our sales team, always we talk about sales expertise being 3 things: knowing the product, knowing the customer, and knowing your competitors.
That's great, thank you. Mohammed, let's wait 1 second and just see if anyone else has a question first, because you've already asked one. So before we go to Mohammed's next question, does anybody else on the call want to ask a question? And if you do, please unmute yourself and then just ask it out loud, or you can type it into the chat box. Okay, Mohammed, do you want to unmute and ask your question? You're still on mute.
Yeah, sorry, there's a lot of background noise. If you would be able to ask the question, it would be much better.
Okay, so the question from Mohammed is, do you have a playbook developed for or by your salespeople? And what are the 3 most important points to creating a sales playbook for Iraq? That's a really interesting question.
Sure. I mean, we don't have a playbook as such. What we have is we have an onboarding process. So this is one of the things which I think is a really great use of technology, which you can use, and I think very few companies do it in Iraq, which is you can do your employee onboarding online using an app, using a website, where first of all, you can collect the employee information. So rather than having to spend more money on HR resources, because as you scale, you're going to need more HR people to deal with it. You have the employee come in and write their name, take a picture of their ID, write in all their basic information, and get that all logged in via our website so that when they do start work, you have all the documentation. The other thing you can do is you can essentially create a process map or a process list, which makes sure that everything that needs to get done gets done. So for example, if you need to bring, if they need a laptop to work, often we used to face this problem that they would start work and then 2 weeks later realize they don't have a laptop. They didn't know who to ask. No one bothered asking them. They haven't been doing any work. They're waiting for this laptop to arrive. So you can integrate all of that into your onboarding process. So, getting their information, making sure that they're set up to work. You can even orient them to the office. You can share pictures of the office. You can share information about their colleagues, contact details of their immediate team. And so all of that onboarding process really helps. And then to come to the area that you were looking at in terms of a playbook, if you do have any materials that you want to share, for example, product information, a product catalog, you can not only present that to them digitally, you can also assess their understanding. So one thing that we would do is after a salesman will get product training on a specific product, we'll ask them 5 questions, which we have from a database, and we'll assess how well they understood the information they were given, if they took it in or not. So that's one great thing you can do. I think that's it in terms of a sales playbook. I mean, for us, when salesmen come in, we train them on the products. That's the most important thing, and we teach them we give them an internal manual. They learn how the company works so that they know how to deal with other people in the company. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Great, thank you so much. Does anybody else have any questions for Karam? You can feel free to type them into the chat box as well. I have like 35 questions, so I'm happy to ask. Okay, well, I will ask you one more. I feel bad in case someone is just a bit shy and is going to need some time, but feel free to type it into the chat at any time and we can come back to your question. My question for you is about growth, because I know when you started, I think maybe even now you're a bit more focused on federal Iraq than the Kurdistan region, but I think you do have offices across the country. And I would love, a lot of the entrepreneurs on this call and in our community are constantly thinking about growth in Iraq, because every city kind of has its own challenges when it comes to regulations, but then also in terms of understanding what their customers might want, who their competitors are. Could you talk us through how you thought about growth, specifically when it came to Elryan.com, and what advice you might have for other entrepreneurs on the call about growth?
Sure. I mean, you're right. We do focus on federal Iraq, and the reason being that one of the most important attributes for our business is the product selection. And most of our vendors are based in Baghdad. So today, the product selection that you will find definitely caters more for that audience. And so one of the things that we're doing now is we're setting our sales target not by the country, because the thing is, when you're a growing business, sometimes the growth comes so easily that you forget to look at some of the underlying factors. So for us, we're having so much growth, for example, in Baghdad or in Basra, that we maybe neglected the fact that we didn't have the sales volume that we wanted in Kurdistan. And so you kind of need to break it down region by region, and that is something we're doing now. We're actually targeting sales region by region. The problem with somewhere like Kurdistan is because you need to change your product assortment, the cost of reaching those customers is actually so much more for us than it is to increase our sales in Najaf or in Basra, because you need a separate supplier network, you need a team of people to manage those vendors, you need sometimes translation. So when we actually launched our website initially, we had Kurdish as a language, but the cost of maintaining the language with all the labels and all the products and everything is substantial compared to the size of the business that we were getting from Kurdistan. So that's actually something we don't do anymore. We only offer English and Arabic, which is, almost we're accepting that there is a subset of the population that we are not going to be able to access as a customer. And definitely somewhere in the future, we will look to access those customers. But today, I think another lesson which is really important for people to learn is you have to prioritize, and you can't do everything at once. And we recognize that for us, Kurdistan is something we don't currently have enough time and resources to dedicate more effort to. So we're investing a little bit, but because the returns on investment that we've seen in Kurdistan have been less than in Baghdad in the south, definitely we're focusing more on those areas.
Let's say that I am an entrepreneur currently based in Erbil. I have an online business in Erbil, but I want to expand to Baghdad. Do you have any advice about what I should think about when I expand to a place like Baghdad?
Yeah, I mean, Baghdad is is a challenging environment. As a company today, we have a lot of expat staff, and we actually locate most of them in Erbil, because even for us as a company which has 90% of its business in Baghdad, some of the challenges mean that it's difficult for us to get the right people working there. Definitely in terms of compensation that you would have to pay, especially to non-Arabs, is going to be significantly higher in Baghdad, and there's more competition for the talent. So first of all, don't expect to be able to have the same salary structure that you have in Kurdistan. Definitely you're going to have to pay a little bit more of a premium in Baghdad. Another thing is the legal infrastructure is different. Unfortunately for us, the government in Baghdad and in Kurdistan don't seem to reach a consensus on a lot of things. And things like tax matters, company registration, can be quite difficult. I've seen letters going between the government in Baghdad and the government in Kurdistan relating to something very simple, saying, I will do it if you send me a letter requesting it, and then the reply coming back, no, you have to request it, otherwise we're not going to do it. And so you end up with this kind of argument, which is, it's a nightmare to deal with. And so what we tend to do for a start is treat them as two separate territories. You can set up a branch in Baghdad if you're a Kurdish company, and you can set up a branch in Kurdistan if you're a Baghdad-based company, but because of the lack of agreements, it's better sometimes just to open two separate companies, one in Kurdistan, one in Baghdad, to deal with your business. And that gets you around a lot of the problems. I can tell you that it took us 8 months to register a vehicle plate in Baghdad because we used our Kurdish company. And we didn't actually, after 8 months, we did not register it. We actually gave up and we sold the car. So we kept a vehicle for 8 months and then sold it because we couldn't register it. And so after that, we just decided to either register the cars in Erbil or to register with our Baghdad company, the cars. So you're going to run into challenges for sure. You're going to find challenges as well in terms of the way the law is applied in Baghdad. Unfortunately, in Baghdad, in the south of Iraq, they have a lot of tribal law. They don't tend to take the civil law into consideration always. And so you always have to be a little bit careful when dealing with people. That especially applies to when you hire people. So unfortunately, if you hire certain people, you can expect to face problems, even if they don't do their work, even if they steal from you. If you try to terminate them later, you may face challenges. So that's something you need to look at when hiring to make sure that you're getting the right kind of person. Again, that comes back to making sure they fit your culture. If their mentality is like your mentality, you're not going to face that problem for sure.
Wow, that was a great answer, but also terrifying. So it's good to know. Everybody keep that in mind. Mohammed has another question, and Mohammed, I'm guessing you want me to read it because of the background noise. Okay, so it's, how did you tackle pricing an online service and communicating that to your customers in order to convince them to join and pay at the very beginning? And then he said, I'm guessing you charge the supply side only.
That's a really interesting question. Actually, we don't work in the way that many other vendors work, in that this goes back to the principles of the way we do business. A lot of companies have a marketplace style model. So they will say to the supplier that, you know, let's sell this TV, and I will say to them, I want 5% cut or commission on that sale, and that's my role. In our company, we don't do that. In our company, when we sell you a TV, we're selling you a TV. We buy it from a vendor, could be any vendor if they have that product, and we will supply. And the reason that we do that is quality control. First of all, I don't think Iraq is quite at the stage yet where you can have an eBay or Amazon marketplace kind of model where you let the supplier send directly an item to a customer and then you just act as a middleman. The amount of work involved in dispute resolution, even in Europe and the US, is significant, and in Iraq that becomes so much more. So you're going to spend all your time sitting there. This guy didn't send this. Also, you have the problem, how do you collect payment? Because a lot of people are dealing with cash. So who's going to collect the payment? So that's a nightmare on its own. And then you're going to have all kinds of disputes. The product didn't match the description, and there's no recourse. I mean, if you have recourse in Europe or the US, in the West, you won't have recourse in Iraq. If the supplier cheats the customer, you're just going to have to either deal with it or you're going to end up with a lot of unhappy customers. And so that's why we said from day one that we're going to buy products and we're going to sell products. Sure, if a vendor is not performing well, we will stop dealing with them. But we will always be responsible with the customer. So even with things like service, we don't provide the service for the products we sell. The brand itself, so if we sell an LG product, LG or LG's distributor will handle the service. But if they don't honor their service commitment, if they don't honor that warranty, we will always step in and we will take responsibility and we will deal with the vendor ourselves later. So when you buy from Elryan today, you have the commitment of our company for whatever you buy. In terms of how we handle pricing, it's quite complex actually. We look at, I think, 4 or 5 factors on pricing. And we have an algorithm which does the pricing based on those things. And what we'll look at is, we'll look at first of all, how high volume is this item? So if you look at something like mobile phones are a huge volume product. The market for them in Iraq is around $2 billion. And they're probably the top selling item on Elryan.com. And I can disclose that we actually only make a 2% margin on the wholesale price of a mobile phone. So, you know, if anyone wants to go and buy a mobile directly from the market, be my guest, because by the time you've gone there and you've paid for it and you've negotiated down the price, if you are really smart, you can save 2%. And it's really not worth the hassle. So that's a service that we provide for people. And the reason is we know that the market for mobiles is super competitive. High volume, high competition, common products. So it's very, very difficult to compete. And so that's what we do there. If you look at another product like, let's say something like a Sony product that we sell, Sony headphones. First of all, the item value is very small. So we cannot, I'll be honest, we cannot get away with charging 2% profit or 5% profit on an item which we sell for $10. I mean, half a dollar is not going to cover our operating cost. So you'll find that that item is priced up a little bit more. You know, maybe we're making 10 or 15% on the wholesale price on an item like that. But again, you would never be able to go and get that wholesale price yourself as an end customer. Even when you compare our price to any retailer, it's unlikely you're going to be able to find a better price. And in our new website, we actually offer the feature for customers to notify us if there's a product which is sold cheaper elsewhere, and we will immediately investigate that and we will reflect that to our price accordingly. So we do that as well. I think the third and fourth factors that we use, we look at exclusivity. So for example, if we're the only ones selling a product in the country, the margin might be a little bit higher than if it's something which is sold in many, many places. And we look at the brand's price sensitivity. That's an interesting one, because there are some brands where customers are willing to pay more. You know, if you're going to be buying like a designer jacket, you don't care so much about the price. But if you're buying whatever you can afford, like the cheapest 32-inch TV that you can afford, for sure you're going to be more price sensitive. So we try to cater to that, and we always price aggressively if the item is price sensitive. I think that covers the question. Great.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Mohammed mentioned that it's the same here, and I agree. So we only have 5 minutes left, and before we close up, Karam, I want to give you the opportunity to say any final words of advice or encouragement you might have to the people on this webinar. Many of them are trying to launch their own businesses, and I think you really are an inspiration for them. So I don't know if you just have a couple kind of last words for everybody.
Yep. What I would say is that you know, Iraq has challenges, but it comes with a unique opportunity as well. The barriers to entry for anybody else to come in are huge. So, you know, if you were sitting in Dubai, for example, and you do a business and the business does well, give it 6 months and you'll have a multinational doing the same business, doing it with more money, doing it better, and investing more in it. So that is a huge opportunity, especially for people who are local. You can own a business in Iraq, which is not easy to do if you're a foreigner. You know the language, you know the culture, you know the customer. So definitely take advantage of all of those points. And as I said, I think there are so many opportunities. I mean, I can name just a couple for for people who are interested. Something like seed capital. So there are companies like a company called Seeders, or Kickstarter is maybe better known, but Kickstarter is a slightly different business model. There are concepts of microfinancing. In Iraq, we don't have a banking system. And so today you see a lot of fintech, finance tech products coming in with digital wallets. And what they're doing is they're probably actually surpassing the banks. People who don't have a bank account might actually have a digital wallet or a digital bank account, because it's so much more accessible and so much easier and more transparent than the banks. And people don't trust banks in Iraq. Similarly, there are not a lot of opportunities for investment for people in Iraq. I've seen, I remember somebody once offered to buy my apartment in Erbil, and they said to me, "We like your apartment." I was thinking of moving at the time, and they said, "We like your apartment, and we'd like to buy it, and we'd like you to stay living there for as long as you like." And I told them, "What do you mean you want me to stay living there?" And like, "Well, we'll charge you rents at this price." And I remember looking at it, and the rent was 4% of the value of the apartment. So the person said, "I have money and I don't know what to do with it." So for them, getting a 4% return, because in Iraq there are not a lot of opportunities if you don't own a business. For you to invest, the stock market is not very liquid. You can't really trust the banks. Even real estate is not ideal. But if people are willing to take a 4% return, imagine what will happen if you create a platform like Seeders, where you say to people, there are businesses like the people here attending today, entrepreneurs who have a business, who want $100,000 of investment, $200,000 of investment, and they're willing to give up an equity stake in their business. You can put $5,000, $10,000. There's going to be some financial regulation involved for sure. The central bank is going to want to be involved, but definitely that is a huge area for potential. Somebody could build that kind of website in Iraq. What Mohammed is doing with real estate is another greenfield area. Fantastic. You can, I think there's a lot of room there for investing. There's things like, we're talking a lot about recruiting and how difficult it is to find employees. So there's not really today a good recruitment platform. I think there's a couple recently who tried to launch, but things like that, they need a lot of, it's a tricky one with recruitment, because if you don't have a lot of CVs on there, people are not going to come looking. And at the same time, if people are not looking, you don't get a lot of CVs. So that's a very, very tricky one to do, but definitely there's a huge opportunity for recruitment services, online recruitment services in Iraq. And so I don't think there's a lack of opportunity, and there are lots of barriers to entry. So all I would say is take advantage of that. And, again, if you're passionate about it, then you'll succeed.
Thank you so much. I think that was great, and we obviously have a lot of attendees who agree. So just as a reminder to everyone, this is Mr. Karam Saridar, who is the CEO of Manahil El Ryan and Elryan.com, one of the first e-commerce sites in Iraq, as well as a giant conglomerate business. We feel so lucky to have you join us today. We will, just for everyone attending, we will post this on YouTube and also on Facebook after probably tomorrow or the next day, and we will send an email to everybody who attended so that you know when it is up. Karam, thank you so much for joining us.
No,
it was amazing
it was my
having
pleasure.
you, and we really appreciate you providing all of this great advice to all of our entrepreneurs.
No, it's my pleasure. And if anyone needs any more support or advice, I'd be happy to be in touch by email.
Great. So if any of you who are attending are interested in getting in touch, just shoot us an email and we can connect you.
Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. Thank you so much. And everybody, please stay safe and keep wearing your masks and stay healthy. Great. Thank you so much. Bye, guys.